Record. Mic trigger.
Hello, folks, and welcome to the iceberg, the heavy metal iceberg, part 2. So it's time to grab your distortion pedals and whack up the volumes to 11 because we are talking heavy metal, boys and girls.
Mic trigger. Mic lock. Button is on.
So, a genre which is kind of in my blood. I was born kind of with metal in my blood. Let's continue with the iceberg tier 4. And we're not getting into the really heavy stuff yet, but we are kind of getting there. We're kind of brushing the surface kind of with some of the bands that are in this in these tiers, at least anyways. So let's kick things off, and in tier 4 I'm going to kick off with a side project, Devilment, a side project from Cradle of Filth. The band had Danny Filth in. It was a much more better lineup and everything than Cradle of Filth. I think this was kind of a more, what would you say, kind of more kind of serious lineup when it comes to kind of, when it comes to heavy metal, especially like this band kind of went a bit more progressive than Cradle of Filth went in my mind. And even though Cradle of Filth was like choirs and pipe organs and orchestras, I guess the guitar was at the forefront. Not saying that it wasn't in Cradle of Filth, I just think Devilment was a bit more heavier and less kind of romantic. I mean, it still was romantic, but it wasn't kind of the kind of the literature, Danny Filth was backing off for that kind of thing, which you could see that kind of thing. And by the way, just to clarify, I'm gonna stick with Danny Filth on this, with the Danny Filth and orchestra, and I just thought I might as well get this out of the way. Because Danny Filth went doing like orchestral stuff, doing Cradle of Filth songs, and like a orchestral band that was like Danny Filth and orchestra, and a lot of people were kind of touching that niche. It was like Danny Filth went down the classic rock route, and you have to feel sorry for Danny Filth at this point because his voice just wasn't really up to the standards. I mean, like, he'd already done a Cradle of Filth album where he was having issues with his voice, and that it was just after Cradle of Filth. I'm not sure if it was before or after Cradle of Filth went down a bubblegum rock voice with down that route at least. So, and also Cradle of Filth by that point had been pushed by the label, and Danny Filth himself was being pushed by the label, and like, he wanted to do different things, he wanted to do newer things, and you could see kind of Danny Filth and orchestra, or you could kind of see like this was going down a progressive route. I mean, like, Danny Filth did go down that route, and Cradle of Filth went down that route, but Danny Filth and orchestra just didn't go down that route. And for me personally, it was technically what I wanted to hear personally, but then it wasn't what I wanted to hear personally. So it was that weird sandwich with that filling that was kind of going off by the purer taste in the mouth. But still, it's it's I liked the orchestral version of Dusk and Her Embrace. It was very, very good. In fact, what I liked about it was that Danny Filth was like doing like a storytelling bit through that. It was like trying to use that song as like a concept song. It was like he was trying to make the cover version sound different. And technically, every time you hear different versions of that song, because there are different versions of that song, there's another version of that song lying around where Danny Filth just stops singing partway through. And there's like this whole creepy vibe where the band sort of backs off a little bit and then they sort of come back in. That version of the song is only available on Bandcamp, and I think it's available on SoundCloud. But it's great. I think it was like a rehearsal take or something, but it's a great version of it anyways. So yeah, but I just thought I would talk about it on this iceberg. Now I'm going to talk about a band that's a joke metal band, if you will, which is Metalocalypse. Well, they're kind of like the new Spinal Tap, if you will. They take the piss out of everything that's happened in metal and that is happening in metal. They even take the piss out of bands hating new bands, record labels, all of that stuff. Bands killing off members. But Brendan Small, there is a really good interview where he talks as a musician, and he talks as a musician, as a creator, as everything, and it's like, wow. And this is kind of, he even talks as a geek. Now, this is where I kind of like, there are very few people in that niche, in that field, that really give great interviews. I'm not going to spoil it. I suggest you go and listen, because he talks about how he missed a Comic-Con, how he missed like just to come and do the interview and do the tour, and he really talks about Metalocalypse. He talks about Death Clock. He talks about the pros and cons, and then he talks about his solo stuff, which is really important because he went and did his solo stuff because he like felt like he needed to take a break from Metalocalypse, but he felt like his solo stuff was ideas for Metalocalypse. So he was like writing stuff outside of that and bringing it to the forefront, bringing it to the table. But it's great when people do that, when they go and they do side projects, and not only do they sound better, but like Brendan Small's just like really experimental guy, and I don't really want to spoil it for you, but I think you should go and check the whole thing out. So yeah, it is on YouTube somewhere, and there are various interviews with members of the band where they talk as a band. And it's great because, like, there's not a lot of, like, when you look at, say, bands like Tenacious D, for example, there isn't much documentaries or rehearsals lying around or anything like that. Sure, there are interviews with Jack Black and, many interviews when he talks about Tenacious D, but really, the only thing that I could find about Tenacious D was Ronnie James Dio talking about them. And, Ronnie James Dio does really he likes Jack Black, the way he jokes about Tenacious D. And in fact, I think Ronnie James Dio throws a few of his own Tenacious D gags in that interview, and that's another really great interview which you should check out too. So yeah, Metalocalypse, I like them. Another thing as well to mention is, like, you see band rehearsals, you see what the band are working on. The band aren't shying out of being a band. Like, yeah, they're a cartoon, and they're a fake band, but when you actually see them as a real band, you see them as non-animated figures, you see them as actual people. This is like, whoa, this is like, just imagine if the Gorillaz did that. Well, the Gorillaz did do that actually, but they did it for like one interview only kind of thing. But anyways, I mean, but yeah, I think this is a kind of thing that needs to be mentioned. And it's like, like Tenacious D are, it's a tricky band to find anything like rehearsals or interviews and stuff like that. I think that's because they do a lot of stuff live and they want people to go see their live shows and stuff. So yeah, you have to give credit where it's due. Do you know what I mean? And I get that they're a serious band. So, anyways, but yeah, so they're a great band and you should check them out. And there's even an EP. Yeah, there's an EP, which is from the first two pilot episodes. But anyway, I thought I might as well mention them. If you're a metal fan, if you don't know what Metalocalypse is, then what are you doing? You should go and watch them at some point. Yeah. Okay, well, continuing on with the iceberg then. Maybe I should talk about another band that is another really cool band. We're coming up with some really cool bands, which is a band called Send More Paramedics. Now, I don't know where to start with this band, but I'm putting them on the iceberg because they are like, there is actually a zombie metal scene, and they do a lot of role playing. They really get into character in their interviews. And I'm not going to spoil it for you because there are now interviews online with some more paramedics. There is, interviews with Sam and Stu and everything. And I knew all those guys, and they're all really cool guys. Sadly, they've all gone into different bands now, but some more paramedics gets back together once in a while. They did that really massive project, didn't they? But anyway, they had to be on this list because, yeah. So another band that I'm going to stick on my tier, tier 4, is Chicken Hawk. Again, another independent metal band. Do you know what they labelled their genre? I said to one of the people in the band, "What do you class your genre?" And they turned around to me and said, "It's thrash prog metal core." And then like a year later when I said, "Oh yeah, check Chicken Hawk, the thrash prog metal core," and we were just laughing, I think. But I have to stick Chicken Hawk on here because they're on Spotify and they're on several platforms. I've heard their stuff well before Modern Bodies, and it's really good. And you can't find it anywhere. So, apparently, I did find on YouTube somewhere the Robot song, with this really amazing solo, but unfortunately, they never released that either. I think the robot song was supposed to be like 2 songs or something. I'm not exactly sure. But the reason I stick the band on the list is not just because I know them. I think they're really, really cool. Right, another band that I'm going to stick on the list that I know is called Year of the Man. Another independent metal band that I'm sticking on the list. But yeah, they're really, really cool and epic. The thing is with Year of the Man, like they were sort of like a sort of doom prog metal band. There was this genre though that was sticking around in the early 2000s. It was like people were looking for genres, and it was like, man, we have to look for different genres. So this was like one of those things that happened. Unfortunately, though, Year of the Man aren't on anywhere. I don't think they're on Bandcamp or Spotify or anywhere like that. But they are on YouTube, I think, or they were on YouTube. Now, I'm going to tell you about another band which you should check out, which is Azrael. Azrael are or were this kind of a really good sort of metal band. And yeah, nothing much to really say about Azrael, except they weren't really great in the studio, because they just wasted studio time. They wasted a little bit of studio time, from what I heard. Don't quote me on it. Could someone in the YouTube comments tell me what they were really like in the studio, and maybe we could do like I know exactly, most of these bands in the studio, like I've seen bands waste time in the studio. I had to mix a band who just, well, I didn't mix a band per se. I had to sound check for a band, and then we had to record them. And literally, we spent an hour just going, look, guys, are you ready for recording or not? You spent ages setting the drums. I went in, helped them mic up the drum kit, and then we mic'd up the bass. We spent hours miking up the bass. Now, literally, when I've been in the studio, the reason I've spent ages miking things up is because I want them to sound a certain way. And it's because I've only been reading from textbooks. So therefore, then you really have to, when you go into the control room, you have to say, fuck the textbook, and you have to use your ears. Does it sound good or does it sound shit? And if it sounds shit, get back in the studio and re-record the damn thing. Come on. Anyway, where were we? Oh yeah. Okay, there's another band that I'm gonna have to come back to, because they were really good, but now they're not. They've gone sort of downhill in my mind. They've gone right downhill. And they were like a screamer band. I'm gonna leave them out for now. I'm gonna come back to them. So the next band in this tier is oh, by the way, we're gonna get just a warning. When we get into the next tier 5, we're gonna be talking about the most ridiculous, silly bands ever to exist on planet Earth. In like they sound absolutely ludicrous. And, they sound really good. There's some avant-garde metal projects that, they're really like weird and wonderful. I'm also going to talk about some death metal bands on this list as well. I got some death metal bands, got some death metal. For those who like death metal, I personally don't like death metal. I like some of it, but it's like, really good singing and really good playing, but that's about all. There's only like a few really good death metal bands I like. And I saw a death metal band live, and they're on the Iceberg. So yeah, and there's a couple of death metal bands that are in the town where I live still. In fact, there's a black metal band that started. And yeah. So yeah. And this is the point where I'm going to just say there's a book about heavy metal, the heavy metal scene in Liverpool. It's bigger than what people think. There are some great scenes in Liverpool. They've got their own punk scene. They've got their own avant-garde scene. Liverpool has everything going for it. But its metal scene blew up. I mean, there was the Crazy House. There was just, metal bands in Liverpool. Like, the metal community in Liverpool is just really big. Like even in Bootle, like, there's a metal scene in Bootle that's literally, there's a fantastic heavy metal community in Bootle, and everybody, if you if you say, do you know such a band, and they're like, oh yeah, and it's like the bands in Yorkshire, they blew up too. Unfortunately, I don't know if there's a book. There should be a book about like metal bands in Leeds, because Leeds had a huge thrash metal scene, and then there's the Harrogate punk scene. So I suggest, if there are any books you should read, definitely get the one on the Liverpool metal scene. It's got interviews with signed bands, unsigned bands, DJs, fans, because people who listen to metal, they live their own lifestyle. It's like they have their own way. It's like they don't want anybody else to understand. I mean, when I was a teenager, I'm 15, 16, when I was a sweaty snod bag teenager, I didn't really want people understanding what I listened to. It just, and when people did understand, it was like, oh yeah, you're on that wavelength, and you're talking about metal for hours and hours and hours on end. Now, somebody in their 30s, people who get the metal scene, it's like when you find someone who loves what you're listening to, it's great. It's still great on every level, because they're like, wow. And it's like, for me, growing up, listening to bands like Metallica and Ozzy and Slipknot and just all those bands, listening to them all just replicate with me, When I went into school, there was only a couple of people that I knew that liked metal. Not everybody I knew liked metal. And I left school and started college, and again, there wasn't very many people in the college that liked metal. So I started mainstream college, and everybody was like, I remember there was a peer in my class, and we'd meet up in the canteen and we'd just sit and listen. We'd sit in a corner, and they were like, "You want to listen to this band?" And I was like, "Yeah, I want to hear." They would play me. I remember in the lunch hour, they'd meet up for me just because I wanted to listen to Bullet and My Valentine's first 2 albums. So I heard what I needed to. And then I found someone else who was in art class. They used to Bluetooth metal music, and we used to talk about metal. We talked about metal for hours, and we spoke about stuff. We just talked about endless things. I hadn't stopped listening to metal by then, but I'd taken a breather. But then I went back to listening to metal, and I listened to dance music as well. But then, that all changed for me. Anyway, you should get the book, and now back to metal.
2 notifications. Bigger live. Mic trigger. Mic lock. Button. Mic lock.
Yeah, so it was Bring Me the Horizon was the band, and they started out as a really sort of like metalcore band, but they were also a t-shirt act. The guy who was doing that band, or he was producing apparently, the band was that good that they were asked by Sony if they wanted to sign. They then became a sellout, and they stopped being a metalcore band, and they are now not as good as they once were, let's put it that way. And it's difficult to talk about a band that, they still have their views, and they still try and put 100% of themselves in, but I don't know, they've gone down the route that you wouldn't expect for a band. And if you knew what Bring Me the Horizon sounded like, they screamed in their early songs. They now just sing melodically like some pop gum metal shit. I've got to say that if that is what you like, then yeah, it's good. And I don't know, they're more sounding like a pop punk band than a metalcore band. And, I didn't really want to talk too much about them because Bring Me the Horizon has just... they used to be a band that people feared because, people feared the band. Also, they've gone more sort of synth-orientated, which, I'm not saying they haven't churned out some great stuff, but it's like the newer stuff is like, I liked the song they put out last year, but every song that they've put out this year is just absolutely terrible. They were even singing about the Pandy D, and it's like they were putting everything out, but it was like, I don't know, this is why I'm saying the band still put 100% of themselves out there, but it's not a band that people technically give a shit about anymore. And they sold out to Sony. So yeah. And of course, like, once they sold out to Sony, they then became a t-shirt act. You know? Like every other band does when they sell out, like every other metal band does. They become a t-shirt act. And it's like, holy fracamole. You come a t-shirt act. Wow. So yeah. The next band is going to be not Dream Theater. But the next band... Oh, yeah. By the way, before we get into Tier 4, let's talk about prog and mathcore bands. Yeah, prog metal, I am going to leave for the next tier, which is like Tier 4. And it's like... But I might as well talk about prog and metal. And I love prog metal. I love mathcore. And the reason why I love mathcore is because it's very different and it's hard to understand. And a lot of mathcore and math rock became a thing, and it crossed over its boundaries. It's like everything else. Crosses over its boundaries and goes into heavy metal. And when it comes into heavy metal, it's brilliant because it's not just guitarists noodling, and it's like not just guitarists and synth players showing off their instruments and drum players showing off drum solos. It's instruments, it's musicians that can fucking play. You know, these people do not fuck about when it comes to math core. They take things higher. The energy is up. The level of the energy is up. These people know what they're doing, and they play it good. So yeah, I think we're gonna start Tier 4 now and talk about Dream Theater. I'm gonna put them in Tier 4 because they're a prog metal band trying to sound like Genesis and Metallica at the same time. And I guess it was trying to bring the keyboard into heavy metal as well. And a lot of metalheads had issues with the keyboard in metal.
Mic trigger, mic lock, button is on. Double mic lock.
Did you...
Mic lock. At 6:17 p.m. Status bar item.
So yeah, and I obviously, you know, personally, I don't have... Oh my goodness. I personally don't have an issue with the keyboards in metal, personally, because like keyboards, if they're used correctly, yeah, it goes. But I think there is like a thing when there's too much keyboards in metal. Now, this is something that I want people to remember. Too many keyboards in metal, too many synths in metal could be a bad thing, you know? Metal is all about the guitars. You know, and when you bring pipe organs in, like pipe organs are different. You know, pipe organs, if you listen to the pipe organ and the guitar together, it's like a nice blend, you know, it's like sugar and spice make all things nice kind of.
One notification, messages, now, Jenny New, yes.
You know, make all nice elements to the whole thing. And the pipe organ, the reason why it sounds like a guitar or a group of guitars is because of the frequencies that guitars use. I am not getting into the science of it all. I'm sure you can go and watch documentaries about pipe organs if you wish. But yeah, pipe organs in metal really, really go, because it's like that nice blend, that nice sort of topping. It really, really goes. But keyboards, on the other hand, it all depends what sound they're using. It really depends. Me personally, I don't mind too many keyboards in metal, depending on what the idea is and what the sound they're going for. But a lot of metalheads have issues with keyboards in metal. So yeah, Dragon Force, classic metal band with high melodic vocals. Even though this band shows off a lot of the time, they are not a shit show. They are a proper band, and they are really good, and I do love Dragon Force. I love me some Dragon Force. Best drum solos, best keyboard solos, best guitar noodling, and the guitar noodling is in the right place as well. It's... okay, the latest Dragon Force stuff was a little over the top, but, early Dragon Force, yeah, it was tech metal at one point, but it's that classic melodic metal that everybody knows and loves, and you can sing along. Well, if you can get into the vocal range, but yeah, Dragon Force is fantastic. Yeah. Iron Sword. Wow, we're really getting into things here. More classic metal. I'm sure if you are a massive fan of Bruce Dickinson and Iron Maiden, you will love this band. I'm just going to say, why have I put these bands into tier 4? Because some of these bands, we're going to go into the real silliness in a second. But I'm just going to say now, I do love Iron Sword. I love the production. Nice, powerful, hard-hitting guitars. Nice melodic vocal with some growling here and there. The drums are really great. It sounds like the band go to certain lengths. It's like, I don't know, it's everything you want, per se, from a metal band, I guess, which is, it's really important to, what you want from a metal band is, it's really important. Now, I know I'm going on a tangent with this iceberg. I've left it unscripted, but I kind of want to keep this, this going. I did script some of it, especially when I was talking about Bring Me the Horizon, because, we have to be careful with those sort of things. But anyway, I really kind of want to keep it relaxed and just go off on tangents. And it's different, this iceberg. It's going to take you on tangents. I think when you're talking about heavy metal, it's like, it's all kind of, what's the heaviest? What's the most silliest? What's the most coolest? Yeah, and that's the thing. And speaking about cool metal, I'm going to talk about pirate metal. 2 pirate metal bands. One is a folk metal band, and the other is a straight pirate metal band. I think we'll go with the straight up pirate metal band first. Swashbuckle. Now, this band isn't really weeded out, because they don't sort of do anything sort of proggy or silly per se. They're kind of how can I talk about this band? So really, it's like, okay, so what you would want from this band, it's a heavy metal band singing about pirates. There it is. No sea shanties or nothing like that. It's just a straight up metal band singing about pirates. And it's really good stuff. So Next band is, I said this would go silly, it's going to go silly. Not Swashbuckle, Ailstorm. Ailstorm are a folk metal pirate band who do sea shanties and songs about beer. And there you go. And they play horns and folky style music because, folk metal is pirate metal. It's not sort of like Jethro Tull meets metal.
One notification. Mic trigger. Mic lock. Button. Mic lock.